I'm the voice, and this is Divi Community Updates, episode 25. This show is all about common sense. I've got Rob and I've got Neegs. How's it going, guys?
I don't know. How much common sense do we have?
I don't know.
I don't know. We're in crypto, so probably
Yeah.
not maximum.
It's not even really about common sense. It's just about frustration sometimes. I don't know.
So true.
But it's funny because you can argue crypto is not common sense, and you can argue it is common sense. So
Yeah.
it is interesting.
Yeah, you
Depends which
could.
part of crypto you're talking about, I guess.
Yeah, I think for me, the way crypto's been is not common sense. Like it just isn't. The industry's not implementing what would be common sense. Quick plug for ourselves. I think Divi is implementing what is common sense. So
That's right.
we'll get there one day.
That's right.
Yeah, I
That's
think
right.
so. I think that's the whole goal is to make it the way it was. I hate to even express it that way, but there was an intended
Yeah.
outcome for crypto, and I can preach and teach certain things and certain philosophies, but we can absolutely state that crypto as a whole has moved away from what the original principle and philosophies were.
Yeah. When I
That's
talk
all I
about
would
this
say.
with people, it's absolutely, I say this is the blockchain that Satoshi intended. And I 100% believe that, right? The idea of bridges is, anathema, would have been to him. Like he would have been like, what are you
Yeah.
guys doing? So
Yeah, you're
and then
right.
everything else that came out of that, all the custody, all the centralized solutions, everything, I am assuming he's dead. But so I'm going to say rolling in his grave because for me, the way this industry has evolved, we've definitely experimented on a lot of things, and that experimentation has led us away from the core concepts that would bring a rock solid global economy. And this is absolutely the kind of language I use when I talk to people about what we're doing.
So I totally agree. However, I think it would be kind of utopic to imagine any other direction, right? Like you have someone who has a new approach to something and then he sets a new direction, but then the ones who will continue that direction, they're not that person. So obviously they will go in a like what they can.
Yeah.
And we've seen
And
that
that's what happened.
what they can is
Yeah.
obviously not completely what was actually pretty far away from some of the things that we've seen over the last few years. However, you can still see that some projects, and again, I'll talk about us, but I'm sure some others are actually looking at developing the same core principles of what Satoshi said for what Bitcoin, what Bitcoin was supposed to be as money and
Yo,
as
totally.
basically for the
Yeah,
monetary
don't get me
system. But
wrong.
sorry.
I think, don't get me wrong. I think a lot of people built their own blockchain with Satoshi's principles in it, but
Yes.
created their own silo. And so if we're looking at it as a whole industry or whole economy, that's
Yeah.
the thing that went away from it. Both Voice and I were in crypto at the time Ethereum was growing. And there were a couple years in there where publicly they would ask, we're not sure what this is for. Like we
Yeah.
built this world computer and we're looking for applications for it. And that was before like the ICO craze and all that kind of stuff. I like token to do the thing is what came out of that. So evolution, there wasn't a way to do a bonding blockchains directly together. There wasn't a way, or even people being, or even it being palatable to people to say, yeah, I'm building this blockchain, it's the better Bitcoin or it's whatever. And then of course, and then say, oh, we want to bond it to another one. I'm using the word bond, but I mean directly connect to another one. Like that just wasn't, nobody was thinking that way because they're all building better Bitcoins or more
And
programmable Bitcoins.
they're still loosely, I would say, no, in the broad general sense, they gave up on that. And what they did is because I would say that there is a break in time where I would have agreed with you about the philosophy of what was thought about and where it began and where there is a break. So I would say yes, earlier on, blockchains that were either forks or new ideas did have that principle of what the that basic philosophy, but we reach a point in time, and it is right there at Ethereum that it all falls apart. It's right there at Ethereum that that philosophy changes, that people are willing to accept other things, such as the words we will choose to use, like trust minimized, and those kinds of things. And they've leaned into the marketing, and that marketing then obfuscates that term, and it really doesn't send a message. Users, most of which are still not even at the basic 101 level of crypto education, don't know the difference, but they get experience through unfortunate events. I was almost going to say a series of unfortunate events, but that's a show, right? But it is. It's usually small things that become something big. And I think that's kind of where we are today on this updates, is those situations that we either voluntarily get into or situations that we through naivete get into can cause us problems.
I think we'll circle back to this when we talk about some of the news items we have for today.
So just to add,
So
I
yeah,
think it's not isolated to crypto also, because you were saying like they all went into creating the new Bitcoin, and of course, like some people wanted, like they thought they actually had a fix or whatever, and actually there are coins that
yeah,
are still here today that fork Bitcoin and improves or made some modification that they considered improvement or sometimes even more aligned with Satoshi's principle. But at the end of the day, we know very well, the three of us, how difficult it is to organize founding behind an idea, behind a new
yeah,
technology. And so I can imagine that uh, other people went through the exact same things. And obviously, I think they quickly see, like us, that the technology is not really what gets the most funding, right?
yeah.
And I think it started a certain way and it kind of exploded completely in like
Yeah,
2017 to 2021, where the actual technology became almost not important.
Superfluous. Yeah,
And then all the rest became a lot more important.
it's
And another thing that I wanted to add about the things started to turn bad with Ethereum, one thing that is also important to see, I think, is that it opened the gates for everybody to create something on blockchain. And obviously everybody is not a blockchain developer.
yeah,
And obviously the first things they got attracted by is money making, right? And
yeah,
so
of
that's
course. Yeah,
exactly what we've seen over the last like 6 years, almost now 7 years. And yeah, I think this is why. So in one way, opening a market has advantages, but it also a lot of time drags down the quality of is actually on the
sure,
market.
sure.
So
I think you're right. I think you and I have had this conversation. Neeks and I have had this conversation that because you make something wildly open, and for the most, we could say programmatic, or we could say from a developer perspective, a very open system from a developer perspective, but because of the naivete even in that group, thinking that it's just about development and just about making it easy or just about making it accessible, that's where these sort of holes begin to appear. And so maybe I would rephrase it saying it's not necessarily right at the gate of Ethereum, and that's where I agree with you, but that's where the fork in the road happened. That's
yeah,
probably the best way
yeah,
I could state it. And once you're on that fork moving away, it's like anything else. It's a set point, once you've adjusted that set point, it's easy to readjust that set point again. And I think that's been fraught in that blockchain from the beginning. But yeah, so I
That's right.
agree. I think it's just gotten worse for us with time.
And I think, yeah, to close that topic, we basically took a major turn with Bitcoin and then started to go in multiple directions from there. And I think there will be a next turn that will lead the industry in another direction, uh, hopefully realigned with the core principles of what Bitcoin was released for. And that's definitely what we want to achieve. So we
Yeah,
believe that it is totally feasible. But obviously, that's not what you see everywhere.
that would
Yeah.
be true.
The and I think like I'm very optimistic that people will be sick of either constantly having funds leak out of our centralized methods or our bridges and all those kind of things, or we'll see that users are sick and or like will refuse to get into a system that requires two tokens to do anything. I think there will be a day. I'm pretty optimistic about that. And as I said before, we've now been looking for like a year. Nobody is producing a methodology that improves upon those things, and so that's why I'm very excited about what we're doing.
Yeah, yeah,
However, maybe you can say that in fact you're getting very good feedback. Like people are not hostile about this,
No,
and they're
yeah,
actually welcoming this, and they would be very happy. Like in reality, we see that a lot of implementations that we see now is not an ideological choice, but that's just what they had. And if they were provided another option, they'll be very glad to move on. So that is definitely, like, the industry, I think, is ready for our technology to come in.
yep,
yep, yep. All
cool.
right. So, hey, who has some Bitcoin?
Yeah, so
Yeah,
Bitcoin
you
is
guys,
back over
we're happy
100K.
again.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep,
Now
over
is the time
100K
for
and
all.
staying there.
Yes.
Now is the time for all the influencers to start saying 250,000 Bitcoin next week, two
Well,
million
I mean,
Bitcoin next month. We're going to start
yeah.
seeing that. I'm sure. I don't know.
Oh, it
Well,
already
I'm sure we
started.
have, but I mean, I was happy that most of the people that I've met were all disappointed with the lack of movement. But I met almost nobody who said, the bull run is over. I can't think of anybody. Now, some of that might have been hopium,
Sure.
but I met a lot of people who were perfectly happy saying, and I think I mentioned in other episodes saying, we're going to really see the numbers that people have been predicting later this year. And for me, I was off by a year then because I thought we were going to see it at the end of last year. So I was definitely wrong. But a lot of people that are meeting are perfectly happy with the postponement of it to happen
Well, I think that
between
you're just
August and
expressing
December.
that trend then, where I think we've seen it, that there is this sort of movement. Neegs will correct me, I'm sure, but it tends to happen after, in my experience, September. And it's not quite perfectly cyclical, because as you described, you thought it was going to happen last year. I must admit, so did I, that I thought something was going to happen between that September and very early January timeframe. But again, Neeks, you probably have some input there.
No, so I think that if we thought that last year, that's because the situation with the US elections definitely triggered some major moves on Bitcoin.
Yeah, yeah,
Bitcoin basically hit a new all-time high, and so usually when it hits the new all-time high, it kind of has its whole you know 3 or 4 month craziness, and then we're done. And that's also, I think, what brought a lot of confusion about, hey, was it actually the top of this cycle? and
right.
and obviously it looks like it was not, because we went down, we went back up. And it's also kind of funny, right? Because we've been in that since pretty long time now. But every time it goes up, it's like it's gonna go up forever. Every time
Yeah.
it goes down, it's like, oh, this is unexpected. But it keeps going up and down constantly. Like it never goes in a straight line. And
Yeah.
and it's just funny because in reality it's very difficult to plan what is happening on a short time frame. um, but it looks like otherwise we are consolidating now around 100,000. Difficult to know if we will stay above or if we go a little bit below, but it looks like we're going to stay in that area at least for a moment. Because then I think when it goes back up and it breaches a new all-time high, then it's
Yeah.
probably going to be that end of the bull run that is 3-4
Yeah.
months. And yeah, we will see. I think we heard a lot the feedback that the tariff and regulations and a lot of
Mhm.
things will conclude by the end of summer, and it would definitely align with that. So
Yeah.
if it has to be that, then we're gonna see some more ups and down until that period, and then it is probably going to get crazy. We all hope that.
Yeah.
I think so. I'm still waiting for your prediction though, so we know we know about your Patreon. So
But last time I got scared because I'm the only one who made a prediction.
you got that's right. You did get scared.
Well,
Oh goodness.
I'll tell you that I tell people to start selling at like at 190. That's my top. But I like if it's 190 or 250. I don't know.
Oh, an end of
If it
Yeah,
was
cycle prediction.
190 or 250, I'd be buying right now.
yeah, yeah. But I don't tell people to buy anymore. That's not my. They know everybody knows about Bitcoin. They can choose to buy on their own.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
No responsibility for that.
Yeah, they blame you if
Yeah,
something goes
right.
wrong.
And why didn't you tell me? I'm like,
Well,
you know.
yeah, exactly.
And still, right, we have a lot of new actors, and I've seen last episode we talked about MicroStrategy.
Yeah,
But what is interesting is that over the last couple months,
Mhm.
the companies which are doing exactly the same are actually exploding. There are many that are now popping up that are
yeah.
proposing the exact same offering.
Strategy.
And so
Yeah,
I've seen a lot of speculation that they are the bubble of this cycle. So that
Oh,
that would be
interesting.
yeah.
interesting to see. But there
And
are new actors on the market. That's pretty clear. There are the ETFs, those treasury companies. Um,
yeah,
we will see. We'll see what kind of effect it has. But Bitcoin is definitely becoming a lot more standardized now. So I
Mhm.
yeah,
wouldn't be surprised like some more people also start to buy it because it's basically how it works, right? Like when everybody thinks it's time, then it's time for a few months until the light goes off for a
yep,
couple years.
yeah, definitely,
Well,
definitely.
you're talking about, it's being recognized as money, right? Isn't that what just happened in that Australian court ruling?
Yeah,
Right. So
yeah.
that's a
Needs
separate
most
thing, right? But if Bitcoin goes up a lot, then Australian will probably be happy if that judgment holds. But
Exactly.
basically, yeah, an Australian court ruled on a theft. So it was a theft of 81 Bitcoin, something I believe, and basically, um, what happened is that the judge ruled that those bitcoins stolen were like if the thief had stolen money and not if they had stolen assets or
Hmm.
whatever things were would have been stolen. So not a physical thing, but really like money, like if he had stolen cash. And because of that, the implication of that judgment could mean, I mean, it's not even certain, but could mean that um, now Bitcoin is recognized as money in Australia,
Is
which
that
would
crazy?
have tax implications. It would have obviously several implications. That's an interesting case.
It's interesting only because it's confusing. Like my whole thing on that right there is like we've got legislators and we've got judges who don't know what they're talking about. and they are legislating and judging. It's clear to me like she screwed up because what she chose. I mean, it could be money. That's fine. And but I think the little nuance there was that she wasn't relating it to money like a foreign currency or gold. Like
She related to the Australian dollar is what she did.
yeah, and I mean, come on, like it's not that. I mean, if you're going to call it money, that's fine, but call it like another currency because people trade currencies, and then I mean, then you've got an established system for trading currencies and how you deal with that. But she did something weird. It's on appeal, and I'm sure it'll get corrected. But you know, it's more the Elizabeth Warren stuff where you've got legislators just spouting out their face garbage, and you know, and it's just very difficult to have an industry when you've got politicians like puking in front of you, and and when you want to build stuff, and this is just another one of those. Maybe it's a little bit more harmless than what she was doing, but it's just along those lines. You've got people in charge who don't know and it's not just crypto. I mean, before I was working in renewable energy, it was there too. And our entire nuclear condition of nuclear power plants across the world was designed by politicians and not engineers, not safety experts, and not it was politicians in the 70s who said, "Oh, we also need plutonium for nukes, weapons." And the reason why we have the dumb designs we do is because of that prerogative. And so when politicians are deciding where technology needs to be limited and where it needs to go, I can't think of a case where it's not broken. Sorry, this subject gets me really angry because like, this is a huge problem.
So, it's hard to know
across the board. Sorry?
It's hard to know if that judge was doing it willingly, or if that judge decided to do that because he was like, in that case, he was getting to an outcome that she thought was justified, and didn't realize the implication that it would have.
That's probably it.
On the larger scheme.
The thing is,
but that thing can be appealed, and it probably will be, especially if it has there are claims that 1 billion Australian dollars, so 640 million, have been perceived by the tax office there about Bitcoin, and then would have to be refunded. So obviously they will be.
They're going to keep that money. Yeah. Or it could be, we're changing stuff now and we're still keeping that money. Like it still could be.
Exactly. Right. Or now it's that, but then here is the tax that you didn't think about.
Right. Don't get me wrong. I actually think Elizabeth Warren believes her bullshit. I don't think out to, I could be wrong on this. I don't think she's out to do the wrong thing. I do think that she believes her bullshit and refuses to get educated for a different opinion. I think that's her biggest problem. It's like she got into this way. She believes something. She's like a rhino going with that thing, and no one can steer the rhino. And so I'm not convinced that it's malicious. I think a lot of people go into politics, to fight the good fight. I just think she's just dead wrong and won't learn anything. And I think that's as big an evil as anything else.
That's not necessarily. How would I state that? It's not evil. It's just plain stupid, because people will have opinions that they quote believe something. We're going through cultural shifts around the world, but mostly as I see it in the news, of course, and experience it in the West, cultural changes, because beliefs that are not reality are being pointed out now, where before they were taken wholeheartedly as reality, and anybody who would speak anything about reality was then told that they were crazy, when the opposite is true. She's crazy, and she's a liar, and she's a cheat. So you're right. She may believe that she's not, but who cares what she believes? she blows smoke, and I don't know what she's smoking, but she's got her own problems. She's not. I
So
don't know.
you say
Sorry.
politicians get into politics to fight the good fight, but I mean, when
Well, I
was
think
it for
some of
her?
them do.
In the 1600s?
Yeah. One
Like
thing I just
Yeah.
want to come back.
the
I want to state it about this Australian thing that I find obvious because it is somewhat related to what we'll talk about here coming, is the fact that who got in trouble? It was a federal police officer who
Right.
stole
Even
the
funnier.
Bitcoin.
yeah
What happened in Ross's case?
Yeah. No,
Two
government just took
FBI
his funds.
agents,
Yeah.
federal officers, stole some of Ross's Bitcoin.
yeah yeah
Yeah, and did they ever sell that off? They still have it, don't they?
I don't even
They
know.
sell
I
that
you know
off. Yeah.
I didn't follow. I could look it up, and I don't remember, but it's just scary that we have people that you supposedly should be able to quote, as Satoshi would say, you want to make it trustless, that you could trust. And it's those same people that are actually committing some crimes. I'm not saying all federal officers. I'm not being bigoted like that. I wouldn't state that, but I'm saying we have an issue where we automatically sometimes trust people or put people into positions of trust that we shouldn't. In this case, I'm sure that officer in both cases, in both totally separate sides of the world and times, those people had symptoms that they were not trustworthy. I don't know why we keep
Yeah.
them in those kinds of positions.
Oh,
It
because they
doesn't.
seek them. Like I don't want to, like what I said before. I don't think everybody seeks political trying to make the world a better place. I think they
Yeah.
are power. Period.
Yeah.
And I think that's true for a lot of officers, and I think that's bureaucrats. Like I just think it's filled with people like that.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I think it explains why it's mostly men. 4 out of 5 psychopaths are men. I think government is a perfect place for them. The other reason psychopaths fill CEO positions. I don't mean fill completely. I mean like there's
Of
a
course.
normal amount that isn't the normal population. It doesn't represent the normal population as CEOs in corporations and freaking government. And so
Yeah, for
that's
politicians, I think it's even particular, right? Because even the ones who get in to fight the good fight, in reality, in the West, the way you have to do it is you actually have to get funding. Like being a politician is actually
Hmm.
very expensive. And so,
yeah,
because of that, you basically have to go see people who have money and realign your positions to match what's in their interest. And
Yeah.
in political parties, the ones that get the most popular are the ones that found the most. Like that's the ones who get at the head of the parties, like the most powerful. That's the one who are able to fundraise the biggest amount. And so because of that, like when you spend 10, 20, 30 years in politics, there is really only a tiny chance that you're still in there just to fight the good fight. Realistically, you
Sure.
have so
yeah,
much connection, so much ties, so many ties, sorry, that it's really, unfortunately, the system itself is really not set up to make sure that those people are still fighting the good fight. They actually have
yeah,
way
yeah.
more incentive finding other fights.
Let's talk about the Coinbase hack.
Yeah.
uh, Moving on, we can keep talking about the good fight, but actually, so Coinbase. So who knows the details? I know it at a high level, but one of you guys know better than me.
I would say at a mid-level I do. I only know from what I heard, and Neegs actually confirmed that he listened to the same broadcast from Brian Armstrong.
Yeah, I
But
listened to it all.
essentially, in one of his support centers, which is something that I hold dear to my heart, is support and teams that do that, is the fact that they have a outsourced teams, other places in the world, wherever they may be, I don't know. And on this team, it, based upon what he has described, had been like spies, like we talk about North Korea coming into that. It was what, 2 episodes ago, where they got somehow into the system of what was it, BitGet, Bybit is who it was, and they were able to get access to that software by having a person potentially there. That's what I think we spoke about. In this case, they had agents, malicious agents that motivated employees at Coinbase's support center, motivated them how. I don't think we're clear yet whether they did financial motivation or some other motivation. Maybe that'll come out more clearly. But they motivated those employees to give up low-level information on what was the percentage of accounts, 1% of the accounts, not a big amount, but
Right.
all
That's
the
what they claim.
KYC details that could include at least obfuscated, mostly bank account numbers, but name, basic information
Pictures,
that could be
ID,
used.
address,
Correct.
everything. Hmm.
So the basics informations that are asked for in just general KYC, which would include all of those things that Neeks just mentioned, and they have those details, and so they were able to get that out. Now, Neeks, I think we were talking about how they turned it around on it, like it was like what was one of those
Yeah,
movies.
that's Fight the Good
What?
Fight I was getting at. Yeah,
Yeah, Fight the Good
I'm really
Fight. What
happy
was the
about it.
movie that you
So
were? It
wait,
was like
Taken. Yeah.
Taken, yeah.
But
Taken.
before we get to that, I want to like that leak is not very different than other leaks, right? And so I think what they did was kind of assessed because I think they were being ransomed for like
20
uh
million.
yeah, and I
20
think
million, yeah.
they kind of like is this leak any different than the Experian leak or this leak or the 23andMe leak? Is it any
Well,
different? I don't think
some
it
are
is.
hacks. This wasn't a
Yeah.
hack.
Yeah, so it is a little bit different because first of all, it is not Coinbase directly, but it is a third party. They basically got a subcontractor in a foreign country, and then this subcontractor still had access to this data, which is absolutely not necessary. And then
Yeah,
there was a breach. We don't know exactly how. Either if there is corruption or if there is like a computer hack. I think the rumor now is there is corruption, but there was a breach in that subcontractor, and they got access to the data, and basically that's how the data got access. So it's not exactly the same as those others.
So I don't mean the mechanism. What I mean is
yeah,
the data. So like in terms of the 23andMe data that got leaked, or the Ledger data that got leaked, or the
sure.
So
Experian data that got leaked. It's all PID. It's all
yeah, but
PID. Yeah,
Ledger
identifying
was
information.
not KYC, right? So Ledger, there was no ID, there was no
no,
picture. Like here, there is really everything you need to do identity theft, basically, right?
So it
correct.
was a
While
little.
on
I guess
the
it
Ledger
was.
one, it is emails, address, and name,
And
right?
sometimes and phone number, by the way.
I don't know. The Experian one was social security number, name, address. I mean, that's all. That's all you need for.
It's all the same. All of this stuff is usable in publicly accessible databases most of the time for a fee with very minimal information, $15 or whatever would be the equivalent in your country. You can usually get full details of a person with that minimal information, and that's very scary.
Yeah. So I hope. I mean, so he put up his own ransom for $20 million for
Correct.
catching the guy,
It
and
That's
was,
right.
and they did
said, "I'm not
bribe
paying
them,
that
so that's the
ransom, but I
report.
will pay 20 million."
Yeah.
So, I mean, I hope it works. It works in movies, right?
Yeah.
I hope it
Yeah,
works.
yeah. We'll see.
So as it was reported in CNBC and some of the other places, obviously, as we were addressing, they were bribed. It is being reported that it may cost Coinbase, not quite 500,000, but somewhere close to that, 400 plus million, to fix this situation to where I guess things have happened. Um, that 20 million, when I listened to the video, was what the criminals were threatening Brian with. You pay us 20 million, we'll give it all back. Haha, yeah, sure they will.
Yeah, right.
And
I'll give you a
that's when
copy
he
back.
turned it. That's when he turned it. Yeah, he said, I'll pay 20 million.
Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. So, I mean, fundamentally, we can talk about KYC in general, I kind of lost my temper a little bit before about the way government legislates, but KYC is frankly more security theater, much
Oh,
like the
yes.
TSA, and it's a tool that makes the life easier for the government and harder for everyone else, and it's not an effective tool. I mean, this just shows one of the reasons why it's not an effective tool. There's still tons of fraud and theft that happens with KYC,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so like this is just a tool for. I can't see it anything different than a tool for the government to create tables of people and what they're doing, and other than that, uh, somebody would
Well,
have to show me a report of the benefits of KYC because I don't
Yeah,
see any.
yeah,
as we,
yeah. And the
we
problem
were
is,
go ahead.
yeah, it has a lot of issues, right? First of all, it makes everything a lot less practical because now you have to go through a lengthy and painful KYC process,
Yeah,
potentially being
expensive.
rejected a couple times because your
Yeah,
ID is not a good picture or whatever problem there is in that process. But also, it is costly. Like as a wallet provider, when we were working with Divi Labs, and obviously every one UKYC is actually a cost, right? So
Yeah.
yep,
even people who never buy anything just go through KYC, that will be a cost for you. And in
Correct.
the end, I mean, obviously it is not having all the benefits that it is claimed to have. And it is a major issue because it
Yeah.
centralizes critical data in one
yeah,
central point. And that's just very stupid, especially in the era of crypto, where we can now decentralize a lot of things. It is definitely clear to me that KYC is not here to stay and will be replaced by a decentralized solution at some point.
Something will replace it. You just got to think about it.
I don't know about
It has
replacing,
to
but
happen.
obviating.
Obviating, yeah,
Yeah,
obviating
like why do we
is the
need it?
best way.
What's it for?
Well, it doesn't make sense what it's for, as I stated before, because both banks, financial organizations have been part and parcel to amounts larger than what we talk about in hacks and thefts, have been part of laundering money for criminal organizations. Anyone
Yeah,
who's listening can Google that. If they were really concerned with laundering and theft, why don't they why isn't those officials, we'll just put quotes around that, why aren't they so proactive against the financial white collar end of it, which is that's what it's all part of? They don't usually catch the launderers, unfortunately, because the launderers are multiple levels away. They're using somebody else's ID, something else that they've stolen. So it usually doesn't get the funds back for the user. All it does is it puts a company at risk of being penalized for KYC handling or otherwise. It's just a mess. And ultimately, in every case, in all situations, KYC puts users at risk always. And that's just the fact. It's not a waste of time in what our goal is, it's a waste of time in how we're doing it, I think, today.
yeah. I think and it will become a bigger waste of time, not a less waste of time.
Of
Especially with
course.
all our tracking tools within crypto, like everything is on public ledgers.
Yeah.
People are going to put into private ledgers. It's going to happen. And there's definitely other ways to track people. Like they didn't have any of this stuff, 40 years ago, and they still caught criminals. It's just hard for me to
Yeah, exactly.
get
It's
around
the
the idea
I
that
think
this is
it's
bullshit.
also a period thing, right? Like we're clearly in a period where data has become extremely important everywhere, and like it is like billions of dollars of revenue for companies every year, and people were never that concerned, or for the most part, right? Like a few people like Voice are extremely concerned with their footprint, but
yeah.
the most people, they don't realize that they're spreading data everywhere and the dangers of that. But things like KYC and all the centralized data that we see today are actually a major risk. Like besides
Huge.
helping refine apps, It also helps refine processes by criminals, right? And
Mhm.
if they get access
Exactly.
to a ton of data about you, and I mean, there is this KYC issue, but there is also if you talk too much on social media, expose your money, talk about your Bitcoin, talk
Yeah.
to a friend who is now talking about your story to someone you don't know, and
Oh,
then adding
exactly.
more details, and now you become a target. So obviously, we've seen in the last few weeks, actually, several kidnapping attempts in France, which was pretty crazy. But they're not the first, right? Like there is a list I can remember where on the internet where you see all the attacks of related to crypto, and it's just crazy, right? So
It is
having
crazy.
having for a company like Coinbase, which obviously has information about people who are supposed to hold a lot of Bitcoin, right? Like it is actually extremely dangerous for a company like that to be holding onto such critical data. And in reality, they could actually have contracted a third party for that. Like a lot of companies do that actually. They never
Yeah.
have the KYC data in house, they just get a yes or no from that third party company, but that doesn't actually solve the issue, right? Because now that third party
Third
company is
party
the target.
company, exactly.
The real issue is centralizing those data, collecting those data. While there is no major benefit, there it is a huge risk for people.
So when I used to do, people used to sign up and I used to do, wow, that's been a long time since I've done that. Do you guys remember when I used to do those free tutorials for KuCoin and Bitrue and
Yep.
wow, there was going Blue Trade, Altilli. I mean, we're going back to some exchanges that aren't even here anymore, but I used to do all these videos, walkthroughs and concierge teaching people how to use it. And they would always ask me about KYC. They always ask about KYC. And I would always state that I followed this rule. If you can't go walk up to the front door and knock on it, then you don't want to put in your driver's license. You don't want to put in, your information. So certain exchanges like the one in this update, Coinbase has KYC, has my KYC information. Um, it doesn't make it foolproof, but the fact is that I'm in a country where I am a citizen of that country. What benefit do I have as being a citizen of that country and that company being in the same country? Can I do something legally if they mess with my data? And the answer is yes. If it's outside of the country, it's under other umbrella of laws that probably don't include you as a user. You're an external account. Even if you KYC, what are your legal recourses? If you do attempt something, you have issues where you're going to have to get attorneys in a foreign country, all sorts of things. All of this, no matter what, KYC stinks. All of it stinks. Just limit your footprint as much as possible. And you mentioned it before, Neegs. If you go to these little crypto conferences that happen, that they pop up around the country, just remember when you're sitting there talking about how much Bitcoin you have, it would be no different than if you said, "Oh, yes, my wife has a big 5 carat diamond."
Yeah,
And
totally.
where do you where do you live? Oh, I live over there
Yeah.
by
I have
XYZ
a million
place and
under my bed.
I have a
Yeah,
Sure.
million
no,
under my
No, no
bed.
worries.
no one tells
Stop
anyone
putting
what they have in
yourselves
their bank account.
Of
exactly.
course.
It does. It's just stop talking about it so openly and freely. And how many times, Rob, you're doing a lot of traveling, which we'll talk about here shortly. But most of the time, these events, these get togethers are either at a bar or these get together. And I'm not talking about a big conference, but these like meetups and things are at a bar or they're in a coffee shop and everybody's talking about crypto. How many other people are in these places, bars or coffee shops? Are there people who go there that you don't know who are looking for you as a target? I'm not talking about you're going to your event at church and talking about it there, although I would also stress keep your mouth shut even at church about these kinds of things. So just make sure you're cautious about who you're talking to, about what. Keep it close to yourself. Don't make yourself a target and limit
Now,
your exposure to KYC.
now one issue here, which we're not fixing really, is that these are crypto executives. So like back when Nick was kind of doing Divi stuff and he's going around, the
Yeah.
world promoting. Like, there's not a way to not assume that person has a lot of crypto. I mean, project, and so there's just the assumption. You don't even have to say that you have any. Just that the fact that you're speaking at a conference, you're on a panel, you're pitching at an event, whatever. The presumption there is that person leads a crypto project, and like that person may never tell you how much crypto they have. It's just an assumption. People think I have way more crypto than I have.
That's right.
It's no different than being an employee at a bank or being a manager of a store. They think you have access to cash somehow, or that you must make a lot of money somehow.
And look, we talk about a lot of problems of the centralized banking system because of all the crap it represents, obviously. But people tend to forget that sovereignty, and if you own your own thing, now you basically are a bank vote to potentially be robbed. Like if banks started to be, initially they were just that, right? Storage votes with security so that you wouldn't be targeted anymore. Of course, we're long way after that. But when you go back to self-ownership, then you have to consider those things. Like you have to have proper security, proper protocols to secure your funds, because otherwise then it's easy to take it away from you. And you don't want that.
Yeah. I'll tell you a story from Dubai. I don't know if I mentioned this last time, but at one of the events, Mario Nafal was there. And he's a skinny dude, right? And so, but he's well known in the crypto sphere. He writes and people listen to what he writes. And so he was talking at this event, but he was also socializing afterward. And I went to go past like where he was. I wasn't going to talk to him. I was trying to get to people on the other side of him. Kind of this column between the column on one side, and I wanted to go next to the column, and he was on the other side. I was trying to pass through him and that column, and I just felt this person was like this block of concrete. Like he did not move. And I'm like, what? I'm like, what a dick. And then I realized that he had 2 bodyguards, and the bodyguards are trained like to not give way. Right. And I had to explain to him, I'm just trying to go there. And he's like, right there. And it was like, he was directing me where I was allowed to go. And I'm like, yeah, you're still a dick. I know it's your job, but
It's, so that gives you an example of there's somebody who's visual, or excuse me, who's, what's the word I'm looking for? Not visual, but he's visible.
Yeah.
And so people know him from his X Twitter profiles. They know him from different projects he's on. He's obviously, as you stated, not a big dude, so he's got enough money, but he's also wanting to protect himself. These are things you need to do when you're in that sort of a visible situation. But even normal people in life have to go through this just because of perception. And you're talking about perception. You would state that some CEOs, of course, don't have a lot of money. They're grinding it through and they don't have a lot, but because they're a CEO, it's assumed because you attach a title, it's a CEO. But even in my earlier example, if you're just a bank teller, right? The frontline person at a bank, when you go into the bank in the morning, you can't go in unless you have multiple people with you. That's the general security principle. But even in classes, courses, and those kinds of things they teach wisdom. Even in retail environments, you don't drive home the same way if you're in management. You don't walk in you don't go to the bank the same way every morning. You wait for people to arrive. If you're going to promote yourselves in these kinds of positions of authority or an expert, running your Patreon channel, your YouTube channel, your podcast, you need to prepare and protect yourself. If you're the average person just owning crypto, just stop talking about it in public arenas where you're making yourself a target. And again, watch your KYC.
That's right. And on that topic, Rob is going to Bitcoin Vegas conference, being a target.
I am.
He is.
Yes. Yes. I can put a big target on my head. And, but
if you want to meet him, You will have a big target.
You'll have
Yeah,
a
right.
big
Yeah. So
you
I
need to wear a Target sweater then. There we go.
should. So yeah, Bitcoin 2025 is in Las Vegas. It's at the Venetian. I'm going there. Usually at these events, there's a ton of side events to go to meet people and forth. And so, but this one, there doesn't seem to be that many, unless I'm like, we haven't been able to find a list of a lot of them, but I'm trying to meet up with as many people as I can. Of course, there are some I'm going to go to. The Bitcoin conference is interesting because it's inside the conference it's very Bitcoin related, whereas when you go to Token 25 or 2049, there really is the difference between Bitcoin and crypto. At those conferences, everybody's there with their things. Solana, Sonium, as I'm recalling, KuCoin, all the exchanges are there. Everybody is there. Whereas, like at Bitcoin conference, you'll see a lot of stuff around mining, like people who make miners, people who make enclosures for miners, people who make
Are you gonna buy a miner?
ways to. I recently bought a miner. I'll do a video on that later, or we can talk about that later when I actually set it up.
All right.
And so there's all those things, and yeah, I might go there to find a way to get it quiet because it's freaking loud. Holy crap! My wife looked at me like I was launching a jet airplane when I turned it on. She's like, "What? No, that doesn't go in the house," you know. But anyway, so yeah, I'm going there to kind of chat with people, get some interest, of course. And that's kind of what I'm doing there. I'm hoping to meet up with people who are in the Divi universe, but also other people who are working in other chains. So if you're listening to this and it's not past May 30th, actually, this is going to come out next week, right?
That's right.
Yes.
It will be the week of.
So it'll be the middle or the early in the week. So that's good. I'll be here later in the week up until the 30th. And so if anybody wants to ping me on Telegram, then I'm happy to find a time for coffee or something like that. Great.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
I
And
am
I think we're
not
done.
going. Yeah,
Yeah.
the next conference is ETH CC in. I will not be wearing my hat and going to that. No, I'm not. So instead, I am going to focus. I'll be in New York State a lot, so I'm going to focus on New York events. If anybody's out there and wants to meet up in New York, happy to do that also.
Sounds great.
Awesome.
Thanks for the update on that.
Yeah.
Cool. I think we went through all the topics for today.
I think so. We
I
had
think
topics
we're
and
done.
rants.
Cool.
Actually, the
rants.
first topic was not in the list. It just
It
came
was
out
not.
of your
Yeah,
comment
it was
about common sense.
Common
Yeah.
sense.
Triggered
I'm
us.
sorry.
It triggered the
I
rest
totally
of this.
triggered
Yeah.
you. Yes. Yes, I triggered you.
All right. Goodbye,
Thanks,
everyone.
everyone.
See you next time. Bye bye.
All right. Bye-bye now.